Darkcast Network. Welcome to the dark side of podcasting.
On May 7th, 1998, a young woman walked into her Philadelphia apartment expecting a normal night. Instead, she came face to face with a killer. What happened next would terrify an entire city.
Especially when investigators realized this wasn't an isolated murder. It was part of something far bigger. A brutal crime overlooked warning signs and the predator who kept slipping through the cracks. This is the murder of Shannon Schieber.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 38 of Stop Who Does That. I'm your host, Jackie.
And I'm your host, Jenna.
And we hope everyone is having a great week. Well, surprise, surprise, I worked all weekend. How about you, Jenna?
It was a nice weekend. You worked and I was working on my tan at the pool all weekend. It was a beautiful weekend here Southeast PA, and we hope it was for you too, wherever you are. And we're starting our week with a bang. It's the last week of school for my kids in the district up here. It's their last day this week, so we're getting into that summer mood, and school is finally over. School's out for the summer.
Yes, and sports are winding down. My
Yeah.
gosh, I have my weeks back, my weekends back.
Yeah, I think everyone just enjoys that kind of relaxed schedule. And
Yeah.
summer, parents love it just as much as the kids.
Absolutely. And also this weekend, we had an amazing interview with a surprise guest that is coming to you guys soon. She has never before been interviewed as a member of a family that we covered in previous episodes. So we are really excited to bring that interview to you guys in just a few weeks. You're going to get some inside info, I guess, into this case, and it's going to give you an interesting perspective. And I think I learned that choices that people make, even as long as 47 years ago, can impact so many other people, even to this day.
So many victims, in addition to the real victims, it ripples out so much farther beyond that. And this is one of our most popular cases that we've done. And we are so excited to share the interview with this guest with all of our listeners. I think everyone's going to really enjoy this one.
Yeah. And I think it's just amazing that people are reaching out to us in real time too and following up like, hey, I saw you did this episode. I want to talk.
Yeah.
Because not everyone, and she helped us realize this, is that not everyone's ready to talk about it yet. And
Right.
every victim's family, they come to a point where they're finally ready and at peace with it. So yeah, it's going to be a really cool interview, guys. And I can't wait to bring it to you.
And when you listen to it, if you could go on Apple Podcasts and give us a rating and 5-star review, we would greatly appreciate it. It helps us grow, and it's really good for the podcast, and it only takes very short amount of your time, and we would really appreciate it.
Yes.
And I also want to give a shout out for my bestie, Janine, for another great case recommendation. She is on fire. She's like our secret case, procurer.
Producer?
Yeah.
She's like a producer.
She recommended this case to us, and it's actually part of a bigger thing, as you'll find out. It's not just this one victim. There were many, and it turned out to be like a huge kind of situation going on in our area.
All right. Well, let's get into it. On May 7th, 1998, 23-year-old Wharton School of Business graduate student Shannon Schieber was found murdered inside of her Philadelphia apartment after failing to show up for work. Investigators quickly realized the crime scene shared similarities with a series of violent attacks targeting women in the city. Despite critical evidence being left behind, Shannon's killer remained unidentified for years, leaving Philadelphia residents terrified that a predator was still on the loose. Her murder would eventually lead investigators to Troy Graves, who would become known as the City Rapist, a serial offender whose crimes exposed major investigative failures and missed opportunities that may have prevented further attacks. This is the murder of Shannon Schieber.
The 7th of May, 1998. The second-floor apartment at 251 South 23rd Street, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, 2 a.m. A call came into the police. A neighbor had heard something concerning. A woman was screaming from her apartment. Shannon Schieber was screaming for someone to help her. The neighbor ran and banged on the door saying he was going to call 911 immediately. He told the operator he could hear a choking sound.
My next door neighbor, I just heard yelling for help. I knocked on the door and I just heard like a choking type sound and I called.
The call was a priority 1 call, the highest classification for someone in need of help. The neighbor then ran downstairs to the couple who lived below Shannon, hoping that with more than one person they would be able to break down the door and help her. The woman who lived in that apartment said that her fiancé was away working, so Shannon's neighbor went back upstairs to wait for the police to get there.
Shannon Schieber was born on August 8, 1974 in Columbia, Maryland, making her 23 years old at the time of the crime. She grew up in a close-knit family alongside her parents and brother. Those who knew her described her as incredibly bright, motivated, and full of life from an early age. Academically, Shannon stood out almost everywhere she went. She graduated from Duke University in just 3 years with triple majors in mathematics, philosophy, and economics. An extraordinary accomplishment that reflected both her intelligence and determination, which I must say that is very impressive.
Yeah.
3 years, three very difficult majors in just 3 years. So she's a bit of a prodigy, I would say. After college, Shannon worked in the financial industry in both New York City and Washington, D.C., specializing in financial modeling and software development. And I work in the financial industry, as Jackie used to as well. So we know she was very dedicated to her work. It's very high moving parts all the time, very fast moving, I would say, career. She was accepted into the prestigious Wharton School at the University of Philadelphia in 1997 on a full fellowship through the S.S. Hubner Foundation. And I want to add that my grandfather went to school at the Wharton School of Business. It is a really prestigious school. In addition to my own grandfather, some other very well-known graduates of the Wharton School of Business include Elon Musk, who coincidentally graduated the same year Shannon was accepted in 1997. The current president, Donald Trump, Ivanka Trump, Tory Burch, Warren Buffett, Alex Gorski, and many more. Wharton is known for producing a high number of billionaires and Fortune 500 CEOs, with over 95,000 alumni worldwide.
You know who else went there? Luigi Mangione. Well, he went to Penn, but
Wow. Yeah.
Luigi.
Yeah, it definitely produces a lot of wealthy entrepreneurs, Fortune 500, CEOs. It's a very prestigious school, and I'm not surprised she was accepted based on her academic history. She probably fit right in there.
I bet
And
she did.
Her research interests focus mostly on international social security systems risk management, and the insurance industry, which Jackie and I are very familiar with. That's very interesting, fascinating. Outside of all of her academic work, Shannon had an adventurous spirit and a wide range of passions. So, besides doing all of her academics and studying and schoolwork, she also loved to travel. She enjoyed scuba diving, horseback riding, lacrosse, opera, and rock climbing, which is a broad spectrum of things. And
Yeah, it certainly runs the gamut there.
friends described her as energetic, independent, and someone who embraced life fully. And by the spring of 1998, Shannon was living alone in Philadelphia while attending Wharton and building what seemed to be an incredibly promising future. I think that we can all think back to that time when you're in your early 20s, you have your whole life ahead of you, you're making new friends, you're enjoying new experiences, you're going out, you're doing your schoolwork, maybe you have a part-time job,
Mhm.
and it's a very truly exciting time in one's life. And unfortunately, this was all cut short and taken from Shannon later that spring.
I just listening to this, it's like somebody who had so much potential.
Yeah,
And who knows, we could be talking about her today and not as a murder victim, but maybe an entrepreneur or
absolutely.
a groundbreaking woman, you know,
In business,
Times
yeah.
Magazine, influential people
Yeah,
list. I mean, who knows
it
what?
gives it gives me the chills actually
Yeah.
because, it's just right there. Her whole life was just
Mm.
right, like, on the cusp of, like, exploding. She just never got the chance to live it.
Well, the night of May 6th, 1998 began as any normal Wednesday evening. Shannon Schieber returned to her apartment at 251 South 23rd Street in Philadelphia after spending time out with friends. At just 23 years old, the Wharton doctoral student, again, guys, she's only 23 and she is a PhD student. She was alone in her second floor apartment, relaxing for the evening and getting things ready for her day of classes the following day. Instead, sometime during the early morning hours of May 7th, a killer entered her home. Around 1 a.m., neighbors Leah Besix and Parmata Greeley began hearing disturbing noises coming from nearby. Greeley said it sounded serious, almost like a violent domestic dispute. About an hour later, shortly after 2 a.m., Greeley heard something even more alarming. What he believed was a woman screaming for help, followed by choking sounds coming from Shannon's apartment. Concerned, he walked across the hallway and knocked on her door. When nobody answered, he tried the doorknob and shouted through the door, but heard only silence. And I just want to give this man a huge
Mhm.
kudos because he did the right thing here. He called 911. He called 911 just like you heard at the beginning of this episode, telling dispatchers, I just heard her yelling for help. I knocked on the door and I just heard like a choking sound. Police classified the call as a priority one emergency, meaning officers were expected to respond immediately. So we're talking patrolmen are out maybe going down Broad Street and they're hearing a priority one emergency on the radio. They are turning their lights on and they are flooring it
Mhm.
to this place because this is an active crime occurring in real time.
Mhm.
Within minutes, Officer Woods and Sheriff arrived at the building. But what happened next would become one of the most heavily criticized parts of the entire case. The officers first approached the wrong entrance and briefly spoke to a woman on the first floor who said she didn't hear anything. They were then directed around the corner to the correct entrance on Manning Street, where they met Greeley and another resident. Together, they went upstairs and knocked on Shannon's apartment door several times, but there was no response. All their neighbors told police they had been asleep and had not heard screaming. And during questioning, Greeley reportedly began expressing uncertainty about what exactly he had heard. So I think this is a psychological phenomenon when you think you've heard something, but then other people are saying they didn't hear anything. You start questioning your
Yes.
own experience. I'm sure I've shared with you guys before, I do paranormal investigating. This happens a lot, actually. I might think I heard something, everyone else says they did it, and then I just chalk it off to I must just be hearing things. So it
Right. And
does happen.
when you're in the shower and the acoustics
Yeah.
are weird and you feel like you hear someone breaking in or you hear screaming, but it's just the weird sounds from the shower. I could see how somebody might think, well, I was sleeping. Maybe I misheard. It does definitely cloud your judgment,
It
and
does.
it's definitely hard, but he did the right thing.
Absolutely. Despite the terrifying 911 call and the possibility that a woman inside the apartment could have been in immediate danger, the officers ultimately left the scene without forcing entry into Shannon's apartment. Inside, Shannon had already been brutally raped and strangled to death. Oh, that makes me so mad. They were right there, Jenna. They were right
I don't
there. What if there was still a flicker of a heartbeat going? They could
I
have
know.
saved her.
And just because she didn't answer the door, I mean, hello, you're a police officer. Like, wouldn't you think maybe she was tied up or incapacitated that she couldn't answer? That would give me even more wherewithal to break down the door.
I think it's because that the initial witness backtracked
Yeah.
and he's like, okay, maybe I'm crazy. Nobody else heard anything but me. I must be hearing things. He's probably like, never mind, never mind. And then the cops are like, well, if this guy is the only one that said he heard something, everyone else didn't. Now he's saying he's taking it back.
Safe than sorry.
Right.
We learned that when we're in
Yeah.
kindergarten.
Yep.
Just check.
Right.
There's no harm in checking.
I work in healthcare, as we've said, and there was a time where I was talking to a patient and the monitor was going off. She was hooked up to a heart monitor and it was saying VTAC on it, and it was like, whoa, I need to go get a doctor. Brought the doctor back, and by the time that we came back, it was just like the leads weren't on correctly, and I felt stupid. But they all
Yeah.
told me this. They're like, honestly, it's better that you say something and it's nothing than you don't say anything at all and it is something. So
Yeah.
sure, they could have knocked on the door and she would have been like, what are you bothering me for? But
Yeah.
it's better to be embarrassed and laugh
Yeah.
it off later
Yeah.
than to not knock on the door and she's in there dead.
I know.
And
I
that's
just
exactly what happened.
I cannot believe they just turned around and was like, okay. And then they just left. And this is where the department began to receive criticism for many issues involving this case, starting with leaving the scene without entering Shannon's apartment. First of all, that was the first one. In fact, Janine, one of my best friends who recommended this case, her cousin was a Philadelphia police officer during this time in these years, and he gave us the following statement I'm going to read for you. And he said, quote, "The weird thing is, I was working in the district or next to the district where the rapes occurred, but really had no idea. The information wasn't disseminated properly to officers working the street. I think it took them a long time to match up the DNA. Back then, the sex crimes unit was a mess. So we had no idea a serial rapist was out on the street. I was transferred to captain's aide's position in 2000 down in South Philly. I think that's when they started to connect the old cases and started publicizing information."
So they weren't connecting the dots yet.
So he was working the streets and he said that the cops on the street had no idea this was happening. The information was not being properly disseminated across all departments. And he said, in addition, the sex crime unit back then was a complete mess. So, and it kind of lines up with where we find out eventually with the other rapes that were going on and on and on. And like, it's like you ask yourself, how could this keep happening? How is this guy slipping through the cracks and this and that? Well, it's because also the police department wasn't communicating to each other properly. And the sex
Right. And they didn't have any. So so what we're getting at is like, the neighbors are probably saying, there's a young girl that lives there. I'm hearing her choke. Then that guy takes it back. They're not thinking, oh, well, there's a serial rapist out there
No,
raping
'cause
young
they
women.
didn't know.
The fact that you're telling me there's a young woman in there, I really should go in. They didn't have that thought in their head.
They
Like,
didn't know.
there's
It
a rapist
wasn't
out.
so the
Yeah.
other rapes that happened before Shannon, it wasn't being communicated, and so it wasn't known in the Philadelphia Police Department that there even was a serial rapist until years. He's saying 2000. That's
Yeah.
like 2
Yeah.
years after this, where they finally started putting all the rapes and all the pieces together. So as you can see, based
Mhm.
on a quote from an actual Philadelphia police officer at the time, this is why the department had such criticism for the way this was
Mm.
handled.
Yep.
So, and I thank Janine and her cousin for providing us that statement. Very, very insightful. So it's believed after police left the building that night, Shannon's killer remained inside the apartment for some period of time before eventually escaping unnoticed. Shannon failed to show up for classes and work the next day, Thursday, May 8th, and this set off alarm bells for her friends and coworkers. It was completely out of character for her to miss school and work. As we've seen before with other cases, this is the first thing many
Mhm.
people notice as wrong. Like, this is absolutely, this isn't right. She would never miss school. She would never miss work. So it was just unlike her, and they knew immediately something was wrong. They became even more worried when they could not reach her.
Mhm.
And this was 1998. There really
Yeah.
wasn't cell phones. I mean, you may have had one of those big Nokias,
Yeah.
like for emergencies only. Like, people there didn't really
They're
use.
probably just leaving voicemails at this point.
Yeah, so they were calling her. She
Yeah.
definitely had a landline back then. They were calling her, calling her, calling her. There was no answer on the other. And Shannon's landlord then receiving calls from her friends and
Mhm.
coworkers. They were able to get a hold of the landlord. So he entered the apartment, and when he did, he made the horrifying discovery. Shannon had been sexually assaulted and strangled with a lamp cord inside of her bedroom. The apartment showed signs of a violent struggle, making it immediately clear to investigators that this was not a random act or an overdose, but a brutal homicide.
Mm.
As police processed the crime scene, investigators recovered several important pieces of evidence, including semen and fingerprints left behind by the killer. Detectives quickly began comparing Shannon's murder to a string of unsolved sexual assaults that had been occurring throughout Philadelphia in the late 1990s. In fact, between 1997 and 1999, 6 women in the Rittenhouse Square area were raped, with Shannon being the 5th victim and Jackie the only one.
Mm.
No, she was the 5th out of the 6 victims during the period of 2 years.
Right.
She was the only woman who was killed. Many of the attacks involved women living alone in Center City apartments, often with the attacker entering during the overnight hours. And this is where they came up with the name of the Center City Rapist. And
Mhm.
by 1999, it was just becoming more out there in the news, and women were terrified. And that's a nice section of Philadelphia, Rittenhouse Square.
Yeah, it is.
You would think the buildings were very secure. I don't know about cameras back then.
Yeah.
If
It's
anything,
questionable.
I
Yeah.
would think the buildings had a doorman and were like very secure in that
Right.
section of the
Yeah.
city. So it's just puzzling to me that he would pick a more affluent, secure section, but that seemed to be where he targeted. Almost immediately, criticism began mounting over the police response to that 911 call that we went over earlier in the morning. Many people question whether Shannon might still have been alive when officers arrived at the apartment building around 2 a.m., and whether forcing entry into the apartment could have saved her life or interrupted the attack, which is
Mhm.
exactly what you said, Jackie.
Right.
Could she have had a pulse?
Right.
And furthermore, could they have actually got the killer if he was still
Mhm.
there? The case terrified residents across Philadelphia, especially women living alone. Despite the evidence left behind, investigators were unable to immediately identify the killer, and Shannon's murder remained unsolved for years, while fear spread that the man responsible was still out there. And I want to say that I do remember my mom talking about the City Rapist during that time and how unsafe it was to be in Philadelphia. That was the late, early 2000s. I do remember that. It just was deemed unsafe, especially for women. This rapist was on the loose. It was dangerous down there. And Janine agreed that she remembers feeling the same way. She was about the same age as Shannon back then. She was in college and she remembers feeling the same way. Just don't go down there. Just don't go down to the city.
Yeah, I vaguely remember seeing this in the newspaper around that time. But I don't think I started going down into the city until mid 2000s. So, yeah, I mean, yeah. At first, investigators believed the evidence recovered from Shannon Schieber's apartment would quickly lead them to her killer. Detectives collected semen and fingerprints from the crime scene and almost immediately began noticing disturbing similarities between Shannon's murder and a series of unsolved sexual assaults that began terrorizing women. Began noticing disturbing similarities between Shannon's murder and a series of unsolved sexual assaults that had been terrorizing women in Philadelphia for years. As news of the murder spread, fear swept across Philadelphia. Women living alone became increasingly terrified, especially after learning that police had actually responded to Shannon's building while the attack may have still have been happening. Public outrage grew as many questioned whether Shannon's life could have been saved if officers had forced entry into the apartment after the frantic 911 call reporting screams and choking sounds. Despite the DNA evidence recovered from the scene, investigators hit a wall. In 1998, DNA databases were still far more limited than they are today. Although detectives had the killer's genetic profile, there was no immediate match in the system, and Shannon's murder remained unsolved. For nearly 3 years, her family and the city of Philadelphia were left without answers while the man responsible remained free. Then, in 2001, advances in DNA technology and expanded national databases finally led investigators to a breakthrough. The DNA recovered from Shannon's murder scene matched the one and only Troy Graves, a convicted sex offender originally from South Carolina who had been living in the Philadelphia area at the time of the attacks. Graves had a long history of violence against women and had previously been arrested for burglary and sexual offenses. The break in the case came after Graves was arrested in connection with another attempted assault where he had relocated to Fort Collins, Colorado. So at this point, he's escaped Philadelphia. He got out of Dodge. He left a trail of victims and moved on to the next place. This also points out to me too, Jenna, that before these offenders are caught, it seems like they get caught for working up to it, right? So burglary.
Yeah.
Right? They're getting caught breaking into a place, but maybe not sexually offending someone or other offenses. But why wasn't he in jail? That's my question. I mean, you were arrested for this. Those are pretty hefty charges.
I don't like that either, and it still goes on today. They'll just let someone, well, you have no prior record, so we'll let you off. We'll give you probation and give you probation. How many times do people get probation before they actually go to jail? A lot. It's not like
They escalate.
Yeah, it's not like you do something bad and you go right to jail.
Right.
They usually give you a few chances. And every time they're escalating more and more. They think they can get away with it because they're not going right to jail.
And I think it's a strategy too for some detectives to look up people who were working their way up with their charges, right? Because even though they don't have a prior history of killing somebody, what kind of violent history did some of the people in this area have? And maybe they work with that smaller group of searches and kind of work from there. I mean, that's what I would do if I were a detective. I'd start with the people who've already offended in some form or fashion, right?
Uh-huh.
But this is just showing he's escalated and he's moved on
Uh-huh.
to a whole new state.
Uh-huh.
Following a joint investigation by law enforcement in both cities, they were able to find a link between Graves and his presence in both localities during the applicable timeframes, with fingerprint and DNA evidence confirming his involvement. When his DNA was entered into the system, it matched the evidence collected from Shannon Schieber's apartment, as well as evidence connected to multiple other attacks in Philadelphia. Investigators realized they had finally identified the man they believed had been terrorizing women across the city for years. He was arrested in Fort Collins, Colorado in April 2002, and within 5 weeks pled guilty to crimes in both cities. Good for you, Troy, for actually pleading guilty and not saying not guilty and
I
causing
know.
everybody so much time, energy, and legal fees when you know deep down you're the guy that did it.
I'm pretty shocked actually because he did so much crime and he slipped through the cracks and then he went to another state and it's like I feel like he was just the kind of person that definitely would have dragged this out, and I'm pretty surprised that maybe he was tired of running and everything caught
Who
up with.
knows? Maybe his conscience caught up to him. I don't know. I don't want to give him that much credit, but I feel like when you find that you're a DNA match,
Yeah.
you're kind of screwed.
Yeah.
So,
And I will say the police, yeah, the police redeemed themselves with their good police work here, with the new advances in DNA technology. And I think that the whole city of Philadelphia congratulated them with working with the police out in Colorado to get this solved. It became such a bigger thing, over time. In fact, Troy Graves raped 12 women from 1997 to 2000 between Philadelphia and Colorado. The Philadelphia attacks, there were 6. June 20th, 1997, a woman on South 21st Street is the target of an attempted rape by a home intruder. The very next month, July 11th, 1997, a woman on Pine Street was raped by a home intruder. The next month, August 6th, 1997, a woman on Pine Street, again, same street, raped by a home intruder. A week later, August 13th, 1997, another rape on Pine Street by a home
oh my
intruder.
gosh, if you lived on Pine Street,
Can
you
you
were
imagine the fear? Like, I mean, that's
especially after the second one.
3 on one street
Yeah.
in a month. 3 in a
Yeah.
month. It's just insanity.
He's bold though to keep going back to the same street. Although these streets are pretty long in Philadelphia, so I mean there could have been many blocks between them, but still, like,
Still. Yeah. Then he took a little break, and May 7th, number 5, that was Shannon. May 7th, 1998, Wharton School doctoral student Shannon Schieber was raped and murdered by a home intruder. August 28th, 1999, about a year later, a woman on Naudane Street was raped by a home intruder. Those
oh,
were,
he took a big break after Shannon.
yes, and we do want to point out again that Shannon was the only one murdered. Those
Yeah.
were the 6 in Philadelphia. Now there's 6 in Fort Collins, Colorado. So 1999, then he moved. He moved to Colorado. Then there was about a year break, 2 years break. May 10th, 2001, a woman on Raintree Drive was raped. The next month, June 13th, 2001, Jackie, Raintree Drive. Again, he's doing the same thing in Colorado, sticking to the same street, like neighborhood. June 24th, a week later, 2001, a woman on Battle Creek Drive raped by a home intruder. The next month, July 26th, 2001, woman on Prospect Road raped by home intruder. August 5th, 1 month later, 2001, a woman on University Avenue raped by a home intruder. And just a couple weeks later, August 23rd, 2001, a woman on Landings Drive was raped by a home intruder. She scared him away as he tried to attack her roommate, too.
Okay, right away, I'm noticing something with these dates.
Mm-hmm.
They're only happening between May, June, July, and August,
Mm-hmm.
and the same week of the month. So you've got May 7th, he murdered Shannon, right? And then May 10th, so that's only a couple days. It's in the same week of May, right? Then we have June. June 20th was 1997. Then we
Yep.
have June 24th, 2001.
Yep.
We have July 11th, 1997. We have July 20. Okay, so that was a couple weeks after that. But like he
No, it's very similar.
this is so freaking bizarre. And both like the Philadelphia attacks compared to the Colorado attacks, we have the 13th, we have August 13th, and then we have
A
a
lot
June 13th.
were in August. 3 were in August in Philadelphia, and 2
Yeah.
were in August. That's 5 out of the 12 rapes were in August. And you're right, Jackie, that's basically the summer months.
Wonder why.
I wonder if something about maybe leaving windows open.
Maybe.
He was accessing that way, and the warm weather, maybe he found it easier. Colorado and Philadelphia are very snowy in the
Yeah.
winter, so I don't know. It is very peculiar that it is basically the same time of year, almost down to the weeks.
Do we know what he did as a day job, or was he just like a vagrant?
It's a good question.
Oh, his birthday was May 4th.
Wow.
He went to Bensalem High School. Okay. So he went in the military in 1999. Huh. That's so weird. I don't understand why the summer. It's just weird.
Yeah, maybe after the military, he didn't really do it. Maybe he didn't work. Maybe he just did odd jobs that there's no way to track them. Like,
So the May ones were probably when it was his birthday.
yeah. The
Yeah.
August is
Kind of
interesting.
weird.
There's so many in the month of August.
Yeah. I think maybe you're right. It's like when you keep windows open, people are out. I don't know.
Yeah, people leave their windows open. I feel like maybe especially if those buildings were older, maybe they didn't have AC, it's a possibility. So maybe he targeted, because of the weather conditions, like we said, his birthday. He clearly, had a pattern there. And what's more mind-blowing is that so many of these were happening on the same street. Like, why weren't the police staked out on Pine Street when this was happening?
Right?
Like, it's happening on the same street. Just put extra reinforcements there,
Was he
like,
just that good at sneaking in and out?
well, remember they did that with Harvey Miguel Robinson, and that's how
Yeah.
they caught him. They
Right.
recognized his pattern. They knew he would come back to the house. Then they waited, and like a couple nights later, there he was, and they caught him.
Right. Yeah.
So I do wonder why police were not staking out some of those streets. And then in Colorado, same thing, Raintree Drive.
Yeah.
So that's the list of all of his attacks. And like we said, out of the 12, Shannon was the only one who was murdered. Why? We know she put up a massive fight. Maybe the other women complied and didn't fight back.
Right.
Shannon did. She did fight back and did this enrage Troy. Troy Graves was arrested in 2002 for the rapes in Colorado and within 5 weeks pled guilty, like we mentioned. The Schieber family faced mounting pressure to pursue the death penalty in this case. But Shannon's mother, Vicki Schieber, said the family felt re-victimized by the debate and ultimately chose not to pursue the death penalty because of the values Shannon believed in, including compassion and forgiveness, believing that another death would not honor Shannon's life or bring her back. The family instead supported a sentence of life without the possibility of parole. Troy Graves pled guilty to Shannon's murder and the numerous other sexual assaults, and he did receive a life sentence. So it's when we talk about escalating, I mean, you would think he would have done more murders. After Shannon's, but he regressed. Like he,
I feel like his goal wasn't, it was more like sexual deviance
yeah,
versus violence, but I think you're right. I think she fought him and
I don't think he liked it, and it just enraged him
right,
to the
exactly.
point of manual strangulation, or he was the lamp cord, I guess. But I mean, he, like we said, like you said, it was more of a sexual deviant thing because he didn't have a weapon on him, or he would have
Right.
used it. So
Right.
that makes sense.
Like his intent wasn't to kill because he would have killed all of them if that
True. Yeah.
yeah.
So, and the death penalty, I do understand that. The mom,
Yeah.
that it's re-victimizing, him pleading guilty was good enough. They don't have to go through a trial, and then the pressure put on them was causing them it just a lot of emotional distress.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, Vicky believed pursuing the death penalty would place her family on the same moral level as the killer by choosing to take another life. And she said that executing Troy Graves would never bring true closure because nothing could erase the pain of losing Shannon or the
So
future
true.
she never got
Yeah.
to have. And we talked about that, and he also like killed her entire future and of her parents and family. They didn't get to experience that with her. Mrs. Schieber also spoke out against the death penalty because of the risk of wrongful convictions and the enormous financial cost associated with death penalty cases. Instead, she advocated for life without parole and emphasized her belief that all human life is sacred. And to close out, I think we can all agree that the Schreiber family has taken the high road here. And when faced with the most difficult decision a family could be, given everything that happened to them, then to have to decide to take
I
a
know.
life, to put that on them. They didn't ask for any of this. And I think we could all learn from them in anything in our daily lives that we're faced with. They are very strong and seem like a wonderful, loving, caring, kind family with good morals. Like they said, they don't want to place themselves on the same page as Graves.
I agree. I agree. And I know it's like when you put it that way, it's like, yeah, you are no, in a way, you are no better. But at the same time, an eye for an eye, I think is where a lot of people, and that's from the Bible, right? Like an eye for an eye. It's like you took my child's life, I'll take yours. And I feel like both arguments are reasonable.
Yeah.
Like I can see both sides and I think it's truly like a personal decision, family to family. And we saw that
Yeah.
in the Idaho 4 where like some of
Uh-huh.
the victims' families wanted the death penalty and some didn't.
Uh-huh.
Or some didn't where I guess they were like more apathetic. It was like, it doesn't matter. It's not gonna do anything. It's not gonna bring our children back. So, but I can understand the anger that somebody would have. Like, why do you get to breathe air? Why do you get to
Uh-huh.
eat food? Why do you get to grow old and my loved one you just stole from me? Which I think is fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And who's to say when we're not in that position and
Right.
you don't know what you would think. I do really support their staying strong through this and trying to do the right thing and keep Shannon's memory alive. And yeah, I get like, we don't want to talk about him. We don't want to
Yeah.
the whole, you know, that the day he was executed would have been a whole spectacle. It would have brought everything back out in the news for the family.
Mhm.
They don't want to deal with it. And
Right.
they don't want to give him a second thought.
Sometimes living is the true crime and punishment, you
Uh-huh.
know? Yeah, because prison is not a good place. It's not a kind place, and I don't think I'd last a day in prison, to be honest with you.
It's yeah, I feel like that is very much of its own punishment. So he will have to
Absolutely.
live there for his remaining years. And yeah, we want to send our thoughts and prayers to Shannon's family and just let them know how strong they are, wonderful, kind people. And we're so, so very sorry this happened to their beautiful daughter.
I know. what a beacon of light in this world and a brilliant mind just snuffed out in a second. And I mean, that neighbor, I wonder how he must feel knowing I did hear something and I didn't
I
trust
know.
myself. I feel so bad for him. He probably thinks about this a lot. And I don't judge him or anything. Like, it's completely understandable that if so many other people are saying they didn't hear anything, you're going to start questioning yourself. We all do it. We all
Yeah.
second guess ourselves.
He should feel good he did the right thing, and not only calling 911, but he actually knocked on the door.
Yeah. Scared him away,
Like,
maybe.
I think he can, live knowing that he did the right thing, and it's reassuring to his mind that, he wasn't hearing things.
Right. And I think, and sadly, it's likely that it was too late anyway,
Yeah.
So even if they did bust the door down, it might have been too late. But again, there's always that what if,
I
what
know.
if. And I think everyone involved, the first responders, the neighbor, they're still living with us to this day. That
Yeah.
what if, right?
Yeah.
And, we should never shame anybody in that position or be like,
Yeah.
how could you be so dumb? Because you don't know until you're in that position. You
No.
just don't know. All right.
We thank you all for listening to this episode. We hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you next time.
Bye, guys.
Bye.